Hi there, welcome to the Raising Cinephiles podcast, a show about passing on your love of cinema to the next generation. I'm your host, Jessica Kantor, and I have worked in all facets of the entertainment industry for the last 20 years, and recently became a mom. Always remember that myself and guests are speaking from personal experience and not giving parenting advice. I am here today with Gelila Bekele, model, activist, and filmmaker. We're going to talk about her most recent film, Maxine's Baby, a Tyler Perry story, which I had the pleasure of watching yesterday. Gelila, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And my first question for you is, what is your first movie memory?
Wow. First movie memory. I would say something, I don't have clear of like which was my first memory, but I remember being really taken by a film by Sinbane, which is a Senegalese filmmaker, and also Fellini. So just like I remember the visuals of their films and their way they told stories. And
Yes.
from the girl from Ethiopia watching it on a small screen, that was sort of like wow, it transported me into their world. And I remember feeling that. I remember the feeling more than like what film I was watching.
Yeah. I've heard different stories from people who did not grow up in America about their access to cinema and what that was like. And I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, what that was growing up with your family, how you were introduced to cinema, because it's always so special to hear those stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think even like anyone that grew up before streaming, which is very recently,
Mhm.
you didn't have the luxury of like having everything in the palm of your hand, and places like Ethiopia or like, when I look at countries like Brazil, Egypt, Sudan, Somalia, the content we would receive was like a little bit, maybe like 5 years behind or 10 years behind. So I remember like watching like Friends or like the Cosby Show dubbed version. You didn't even hear the real actor's voice. But what I really appreciated was there was no like propaganda in how it was curated. It was just like it was shown because it was available.
Mhm.
So you had like a wider sort of option in a sense of like I remember watching French cinema, Indian Bollywood, Nollywood from Nigeria, like some Senegalese filmmakers, European, American. So like you had like a wider sort of exposure, but it wasn't available all the time.
And did you watch films in a cinema? Did you watch them on a television? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, the earlier part of my life, we watched it in like a neighbor's television, and it was like one neighbor that had TV, so
Hmm.
they would open their window, and like all the neighborhood kids would like stick their head
Yes.
and you're sharing. Most likely, you can't even hear the audio because the TV is so far away.
Hmm.
Or like my uncle would treat me and take me to a cinema in Addis in Ethiopia, and it would be like Indian film, like the newest Indian film that came out, or an Ethiopian cinema. So that was my memory.
Yeah. It's interesting. What I was struck with in watching your film was it was really artfully made.
Mm.
You took time in bringing us into Tyler Perry's world and into his childhood, and your choices of how you put it together. You know, it felt like you were very educated in cinema when I was watching the film.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I wanted to invite you to speak to your inspirations were and where they came to you in your life as you were applying it to the film.
I'm, taught by practice. I never went to film school. I started my career as a model, and modeling sort of exposes you to so much, and also being able to work with the best photographers. And if I was on the set for L'Oreal or Pantene, you had the best cinematographers who were lighting and all of that stuff. So I was like a sponge that was absorbing all of that, and annoying them, asking them about camera and placement, and it really also taught me how to communicate with my subjects. I've been on a set where um, either the art director or the photographer didn't communicate with me what was going on, so I had to figure it out, and it was awkward. And there are times where they were very generous and open and told me what we were shooting or what's happening, so I was well prepared. So that sort of prepared me in documentary filmmaking. You don't have the luxury of saying cut and let's do it again. And these are real people. My first film we shot in rural part of Ethiopia, as rural as it gets, indigenous Ethiopian land, where most people had never seen a camera before. So you bring out your camera, they think it's a weapon or they've never seen foreign object. So you have to sort of play and let them play with it, let them film you, get to know them, and that's sort of like the human connection is important. I think most of the time in filmmaking, we focus on the technical aspect, but it is really about human relationships. It is about when someone is sharing their life with you and being vulnerable. All of that depends on the landing pad. If
Yeah.
people are comfortable, they're not going to open up. And camera doesn't lie, it captures everyone's mood and temperature. And it's all by practice that I sort of learn, and I'm still learning. And this film has been, especially this film, the biggest learning curve of making a film in this magnitude.
Yeah. There's an interesting dissonance between Tyler's process of creating a film and the container that you've created for that in your documentary. And I'm curious how you were able to hold that space and not get caught up in that rhythm, because he has a rhythm to how he creates, and your film is not that. It's over an expansive amount of time, and a very different rhythm. So I'd love for you to speak to that about that, whether that was a challenge for you or not.
Yeah, I mean, he does have his own rhythm, but I think I had to take myself out of it to really be a good listener, because I had to make sure I wasn't interrupting the storytelling by my own knowledge, but it had to be captured from a lens that, like, as if I didn't know anything. So, not being on the way was important, not to get on the way of what he's doing, and just staying small, shotgun style, one camera. So there were days that we filmed for 16 hours and nothing happened. And there are days for 5 minutes and you get something magical. And also, I think, too, I had to really learn to be a good listener. I think filmmaking, you must listen. People show you who they are, how they move, and then you sort of learn to keep up with their own rhythm. I think film is a unique art form that's sort of similar to music. And either you sort of hear the tunes and you stay on rhythm, or
Yeah.
you're offbeat and it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
following the subject you're following, they're following their rhythm is important.
Yeah. Something else I think is really relevant to this podcast because I'm talking about sharing your passions across the generation. And this is definitely a very generational film. Um, the motivations for Tyler Perry coming from his upbringing and how he's breaking that generational cycle with how he wants to raise his child. And forgive me, but you share a son, you and Tyler, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And so you brought your son a little bit into this film, very specifically, I felt at least, to showcase that change in generational trauma.
Mm.
Could you talk about that? Why that was important to the story that you were telling?
Yeah, I think the topic of fatherhood is important, especially in this story. And I mean, in all of us, I think everything starts from home. You're a mother, you're feeling it, you're experiencing it daily, how you're shaping your child and how your child sort of is a result of that environment. And seeing Tyler, become a father and pour so much love into this little boy's life, and which is opposite of what he experienced. It's pretty fascinating, the human
Yeah.
spirit of like what we endure, and when we sort of are ready to heal and forgive and move forward and freeing ourselves and to fully experiencing this love, it's pretty magical.
Yeah.
I think there's like a three different generation of men, right? Like Emmett, Tyler, and Aman. And Aman is receiving this this beautiful love and connection with his father that Tyler never experienced.
Hmm.
I think that was also why Maxine was so important, because she's the source of that love,
Yeah.
right? And also as a filmmaker, exploring um, what is love? How are we do? Is it something we are born with innately? Um,
Yeah.
Practice that we learn. So it's very important part of the story.
Yeah. It's also so, healing for trauma.
Also, like when that trauma is not healed, you're repeating the same cycle. In Emmett's
Yeah.
case, that's what Tyler beautifully explained. Is that I needed to forgive and learn more about Emmett's background to understand where this rage and anger and violence comes from. Not to excuse any of that, but like to understand, I think helped him free himself a little bit more.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask, has your son been introduced to cinema?
Yes, I mean age appropriate, cinema. He is a storyteller, himself naturally. I can see that. But I feel like at that age, children are so imaginative, like between, I would say, until about 10, 11, they're very expressive and books and writing and all of that and building. So it's been really beautiful to witness that.
Yeah. Do you remember the first movie you showed him?
Yeah, I was pretty late to like introducing screen time. um, but he caught the bug of Paw Patrol early
Huh.
on with his friends, and to see the Paw Patrol show, and it's just like dogs and trucks and the characters, and wanting to be one of those characters. That was like quite beautiful.
Yeah. And have you brought him to the cinema yet? Like to experience a movie in that arena? How old? I don't know how old he is.
Yeah, he's almost 9. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So,
Of course, and I think the best part about like having access to cinema all around is like
yeah.
the big screen is quite a magical place, especially at that age, to see it. It's a larger than
Yes.
life moving picture.
Yes, for sure. And do you, I mean, I guess at 8 or 9, do you have a sense of his taste?
Mm, correct.
You do.
Yeah.
Uh, has it surprised you?
No, I think it made me even more become like a kid myself. That's what like I think play and imagination, as we grow older, we sort of like we don't practice it as much, and play and creativity and imagination is so important, especially as an artist, to try, and not for the purpose of like making something and seeing the end result first, but more about like I'm curious, I want to do this, I want to film this, I want to create this, I want to paint this, and just like encouraging me to play more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're in the fort building stage in my house. So we're just the beginning of that. I haven't really been that restrictive on screen time, but I really care the content that he watches. That's sort of been my approach. Are you going to show your son, or has your son seen the film?
No, I don't think it's age appropriate. It is
Yeah.
PG-13. Just
Okay.
wait
You're
longer.
gonna Yeah, I mean it's hard. I've spoken to a few people in entertainment that are like, yeah, I don't think my kid is gonna see our movies for a long time, if ever. Yeah. But it seems like it's a very special film for your son in a way. Have you spoken with Tyler about introducing your son to his childhood?
When he's old enough, it's something we share. There's nothing bad about sharing this film with, our son. I think just making sure that he's emotionally equipped to process, especially because it is a story about his father. Um, but yeah, I think when the time's right, I'm excited to share it with
Yeah,
him.
it's gonna be beautiful. I think more what I was referring to is breaking the illusion of your father a little bit and turning him into a person, you
Yeah,
know. And I think that that's a specific age. I don't haven't discovered that yet with my son. I don't really remember it with myself of when I discovered my parents were people, like fully
yeah,
formed with their own experiences. It's such an interesting time to
yeah.
to explore with your children.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's a lifelong practice, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Um, and are there any films that you absolutely love that you're excited to show your son as he grows older?
Oh, so many. I'm excited to share with him like all the filmmakers that I admire and adore. And also him sharing his favorites, like swapping,
Yeah.
the same way like we do with books and music, and there's so many great filmmakers that I love their work, like, Mira Nar and Eva DuVernay, and like there's so many and so much
Mhm.
to discover. I'm excited. Yeah.
Trying to remember your night.
So she's incredible. I mean, when you look at like Monsoon Wedding to Namesake to like the plethora of like her storytelling ability, it's pretty incredible. And also
Yeah.
like she's able to jump in and out of cultures, you know,
Yeah.
like Queen of Katwe, which was shot in Uganda, and then you get to see like the Ugandan roots,
Mm.
and also like mixing this like her Indian background, but like the influence of like living and growing up in Uganda and also living in the US, connecting these three cultures and languages. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. So I'll ask you my last question, which is a film you would recommend for my son to fall in love with cinema.
He's two, you said?
But he doesn't, it could be when he's older. I could show it to him when he's older. So yes.
I would say Cinema Paradiso,
Oh,
beautiful film.
yes.
Um, Black Girl by Sinbin, because it's magical. It tells about this beautiful young lady who moves from Senegal to France to be a housekeeper, and it's told from her own voice.
Oh, I love that.
It's quite beautiful. It's
Yeah.
also about a period time, like black and white, vintage. Um,
Yes.
um, Pie, I
Darren
think.
Aronofsky's Pie.
So, yeah, I think that's beautiful. Um, What else? What else? What else? What else?
Those
Eight
are,
and a Half by Fellini. It's a good film.
yes.
Yeah. And there's an Ethiopian filmmaker, Yared. He's an indie filmmaker. And there's a film called Lamb, of a coming of age of a young boy from mountains of Ethiopia. Beautifully shot. Of course, In the Mood for Love, which is the cinematography, is
Oh, yes.
incredible.
The Wong Kar-wai film. It's
Yeah.
one of my
There's so
favorites.
much, so much.
Yes, there's so many. Well, this was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much.
Tyler's the latest film, the Jazz Man's Blues. That's
Oh,
beautiful shot. The
yeah,
cinematography and storytelling is pretty incredible as well. So I would
yeah,
add to the list. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate your time, and I'm really congratulations on your film.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. It's a great conversation. Thank you.
If you enjoyed the conversation, please don't forget to like and subscribe. New episodes release every Wednesday. And leave a comment and let me know which movie you think I should show my son. Until next time, take care.